Welcome into the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. It is Tuesday, September 6th. I am Blair Angulo, and I'm joined by national recruiting analyst covering the Southeast and also the co-host of the Preps to Pro show, Andrew Ivins. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Football-filled Labor Day weekend. I love it. Tons of close games. Nothing better.
We have talked on this show before about cookie cakes and the arrival of, I guess, the muscle car photo shoot to recruiting visits. The first big official visit weekend is in the rearview mirror, and I didn't really see much of either of those two things. What's going on? Who's going to set the trend?
I don't know. It seems like a lot of schools kind of blew their budget on the June visits. So someone will come up with something creative when we get to November and December. You do not worry about that, Blair. Someone out there is creative mind is thinking something up.
We just need that first domino to drop, and then everyone will follow suit, and it's going to be the hottest thing in college football recruiting. We are going to break down and reset the board in a way in the Southeast with the top 5 uncommitted prospects as we head into week 2 of the college football season. Remember, if you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating. Subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like this video. We're going to talk about Samuel and Pemba, Damon Wilson, Dijon Johnson, as well as Reuben Bain. But let's start at the top, Andrew, with 5-star corner Cormani McClain. What's the latest in his recruitment? And are we any closer to maybe a list being revealed?
Well, I'll start with the latter part. I don't know if a list or a decision is going to come soon, but I think Florida, man, I think they're the team to beat. You know, on Preps to Pros, I said last week before these games happened, I thought Florida's opener against Utah was all about Cormani. And why? Because I think Cormani is a kid who has always liked the Gators. You know, he's from Lakeland, Polk County. That's a traditional UF stronghold. The Pouncey twins, Chris Rainey, Ahmad Black, all those guys went from there up to Gainesville. And Cormani knows a ton of people in Gainesville. So I think he's been looking for a reason to go to Florida. Someone give him a reason. And I think Saturday night's win for the Gators over number 7 ranked Utah might be the tipping point. I still think Alabama is a school that's seriously involved in this recruitment, but I love my crystal ball forecast, my orange and blue one for Cormani McClain. I know Steve Wiltfong, the director of recruiting at 24/7 Sports, he fired one in late Saturday night. But I think Florida's a team to beat. Alabama's in there. Miami's also in there, but it's shaping up to be a Florida-Alabama battle in, 4 months before the early signing period. I like Billy Napier and the Gators.
You know, the environment looked awesome, as we would have come to expect for a big, highly anticipated season opener at the Swamp. And the reaction from recruits following that game obviously speaks to not only the game day atmosphere, but also I think the culture that Billy Napier has been building out. If you're a Gators fan, you might be sweating because Alabama does have an official visit scheduled for next month. I believe it's the second weekend of October. How big will that trip be for Cormani McClain? And do you get a sense that Alabama has a real shot here?
Oh, they absolutely got a shot. Anytime a blue chip defensive back or the nation's number 1 ranked corner like Cormani McClain is going up to Tuscaloosa for the 3rd or 4th time, I mean, you got to like Nick Saban here. He coaches that position group. You also got to like T-Rob, the new DB coach in T-Town. I think he's a really, really good recruiter. He has built a relationship with Cormani dating back to T-Rob's days at the University of Miami. So I think, yes, absolutely. Got to watch out for Alabama. But at the same time, if you're Florida, like I said, I think Cormani likes the Gators. And remember, Corey Raymond, who's renowned as one of the top recruiters ever out there, he's now on staff at Florida, and cornerbacks are his position. So I think you got to keep that. But yes, Alabama, and that week 2 visit, Blair, that's going to be for one of the games of the year, Texas A&M versus Alabama. So Cormani thought he saw a good environment for Florida, Utah. He's going to see something that's just the same, if not better, when Alabama hosts Texas A&M.
Yeah, and I wonder if Nick Saban's going to be on his best behavior with Jimbo Fisher coming to town. Let's move on to the next one, Samuel and Pemba. This one appears to be maybe all over the map. There's a crystal ball prediction in for Georgia. There's another one in for Miami. I know he's scheduled an official visit with Notre Dame. What's the latest on the top tier edge rusher from IMG Academy?
Yeah, Sam's a kid that's originally from the St. Louis area. Now he's prepping at IMG Academy. And kind of the rule of thumb is these kids, when they come from out of state down to Florida, they usually return back home to a similar region of where they came from. Now, Georgia's kind of broke that up in recent years. They grabbed Jihad Campbell out of IMG Academy, who's a New Jersey native. They grabbed Alabama did. Alabama and Georgia. And then I was thinking of Dalen Everett, the corner from Virginia, who went to Georgia. So the SEC, the big boys, can traditionally get some of these guys to not go back home and pick their school. And I think within Pemba, the crystal ball is trending towards Georgia. Steve Wiltfong fired in a forecast. I'm close to doing it as well. I think they're the team to beat right now in this recruitment. They're in the lead breakaway. And then right behind in that chase group is Miami. Florida seems to be getting some traction. Tennessee's also been tossed out there. And then Notre Dame. Notre Dame's set to get an official visit later on in November. So those are really the schools. I like Georgia. I think kids want to play in Kirby Smart's defense. We know what they did last year in the run-up to the national title. We know what they did in the NFL draft. And then if you saw this past Saturday, I mean, it was just another dominating performance. Kids know that they can go there. They don't even have to start. Just play and get drafted. So again, I think Georgia is the team to beat. That chase, Miami, Tennessee, Florida, Notre Dame, and I forgot another one, Oregon. I think Oregon's in there as well. He's really close with Dan Lanning. So we'll see, but it doesn't seem like a decision's coming anytime soon for Samuel Mpemba.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question regarding Georgia specifically. This was a humiliating loss for Oregon. And I think we as media and us as college football aficionados, we were hoping that it would be closer than it was, but the talent discrepancy, I guess the physicality and the speed discrepancy was very clear. And whenever you look at a defense, the way they play, the way they're able to rotate bodies, they have, you know, the 2 deep, a 3 deep that can really start at any college program. With Samuel Mpemba specifically, have you maybe gotten a sense of how he sees himself fitting in to Georgia's scheme or to any other scheme, or is there a particular thing about the Bulldogs that really attracts him?
Well, he's really close with Jerby, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the UGA assistant's first name. He's the outside linebackers coach, and he's got some ties to West Africa. Samuel Mpemba does as well. Every time I see him to talk to Sam, he mentions Derby and the fact that they both play Madden online together. I think Sam's still trying to figure out where he ultimately fits in. I call him kind of a front 7 defender that can do a variety of different things. You know, this time last year, he actually thought he might be a tight end. He's quickly realized that he can make some money with his bodybuilder-like arms. This is a kid that was on my freaks list. I mean, you look at him, you're like, this is the first guy off the bus at pretty much every high school in America. He's just that ripped and that rocked up. So we'll see. I think he sees himself as an outside linebacker in that 3-4 front, but that doesn't mean he can't put in his hand in the dirt eventually and play as a 4-tech. So I just think it's the coaching staff and the fact that he knows he's going to get developed in Athens, and that's one of the reasons why he's so high on UGA.
Yeah, 6'4", 240. I wonder how small that Madden controller looks in his hands. Probably an interesting sight. There was obviously a lot of talk, you know, over the off season about the photo shoots, about the muscle cars, about, you know, the experience to bring in a new dimension into recruiting. Do you have any ideas? Can we start to maybe draw up some plans for the next wave and the next trend, or are we possibly going to keep that for ourselves?
I'll say this. I don't know if I've said this on any of the 24/7 sports platforms, but this summer I was at a camp with one of those mega camps with a variety of different coaches. And I don't know what coaching staff said it, but they're like, we're so tired of all these damn sports cars. We're going to get a tank. We're going to put a tank at midfield for a photo shoot. So I'm looking forward to someone, you know, renting a tank, buying a tank, whatever it is, and putting it at the 50-yard line. I think that would be pretty damn unique.
Yeah, very unique. I brought up a question on Twitter ahead of the big week 1 games, and I was curious if there's going to be any players that maybe write the collective's name on the eye black, or, you know, or if they score a crucial touchdown, they pull up the jersey, reveal maybe their Venmo username account. We're in the NIL era. I'm expecting things to happen, Andrew. So
I think you just gave some guys some ideas that listen to the podcast, or maybe their agents or handlers.
Yeah. So if anything like that happens, make sure you tweet at us and let us know, in the following weeks. Let's move on to the next player, Andrew. Damon Wilson. What's the latest on the premier edge rusher from Venice, Florida?
So Damon Wilson actually goes to my fiance's high school. She played volleyball there. He plays football, and he does it at a very, very high level. 16.5 sacks last season for Florida's 8A state champs. That's just part of the story with Damon Wilson. He is a freak athlete, can jump, put his chin on the rim, moves a ton of iron in the weight room. I don't even have the numbers off the top of my head, but this guy was in the top 10 of my freaks list. And he just spent Labor Day weekend at Ohio State on an official visit. And I think that's kind of notable because Larry Johnson is telling Damon Wilson, hey, you could be the next Nick Bosa, you could be the next Joey Bosa, or more importantly, you could be the next Chase Young for us. I think Damon Wilson really likes the tone of that. But ultimately, Blair, I think the SEC is going to be pretty hard to beat for Mr. Wilson. You got Georgia in there, you got Alabama in there, and then you got Texas, who is moving into the SEC. They're lingering. They haven't even gotten an official visit from Damon Wilson. So I think Georgia, Alabama, two to watch out for. I said Ohio State's comparing Damon to, a Chase Young or a Bosa brother, where Alabama's saying, hey, come be the next Will Anderson for the Crimson Tide. And I think if I'm an 18-year-old kid, I like the sound of that pitch. And then one dark horse in this whole recruitment, I don't even know they should be called a dark horse because they've already gotten 2 visits, is the Miami Hurricanes, in-state program. Jason Taylor is a defensive analyst there that works exclusively with the pass rushers. I think Damon Wilson really likes the tone in that. So we'll see. He's used 2 official visits, Alabama, Ohio State. It sounds like Miami, Texas, and Georgia are going to get those last 3. And I anticipate this one going the distance. We might not know until that 3rd week of December where Mr. Wilson's headed to school.
Yeah, Wilson was in Columbus along with a couple other edge rushers, Mateo Uiagalelei as well as Keon Keeley. So a little bit of, I think, gamesmanship there by the Ohio State Buckeyes coaches to bring in the 3 guys and, have them interact and be sitting in the stands there together watching that matchup against Notre Dame to kick off the season. Dijon Johnson's another top uncommitted prospect in the state of Florida, the 4-star corner. Right now, it looks like the crystal ball is leaning towards the Florida Gators.
Yeah, and Blair, I don't know if you know this kid's nickname, but it's one of the best in the class of 2023. Swamp 247. Their subscribers have dubbed Dijon Mustard. So me and Cooper on Preps to Pros, we only call him Mustard.
When I texted you the list of players that we wanted to discuss, I actually didn't even call him Dijon Thompson. And I think didn't even call him Deshawn Johnson. I called him Dijon Thompson. It was just a typo on my end. But I was going to tell you the mustard guy.
No. He's an interesting prospect. They're at Tampa Wharton. I think what most people don't know about Mustard is he's already made 2 commitments. He plays for Mike Williams. Yes, that Mike Williams, the former first-round NFL wide receiver at USC. He plays for him at Tampa Wharton High School. And from what I was told, Dijon at one time was silently committed to the Trojans. Well, on Easter, I'll never forget this, I was at Easter brunch, Dijon ended up committing to Ohio State. He has since opened that thing back up, and he's been a regular at Florida. I remember seeing him at Friday Night Lights, which is Billy Napier and the Gators' premier recruiting event in late July. He was in the Swamp for that win over Utah. I think Florida is just going to be super hard to beat here. That's ultimately where I project him to go. Maybe Miami gets a visit. Maybe Ohio State can get back in this thing. But it seems like Billy Napier, Corey Raymond, and the Gators are in the driver's seat to land Dijon Johnson. And the last thing I'll say on that is that's pretty notable because back in March or in February, I said, hey, who's going to get Dijon Johnson and Jakeem Jackson, which was a top 247 corner out of the Orlando area, because it seemed like Cormani McClain might end up at Alabama. And I said those are the next 2 guys up. Well, Jakeem Jackson's committed to Florida. Dijon Johnson's trending towards Florida. And then the cherry on top is the Gators might actually end up with Cormani McClain. So the future of the corner room looks pretty bright for Corey Raymond.
We need to get Dijon some sort of NIL deal, right? With French's or some sort of mustard company.
Bijan Robinson has one, right? If he can do it, let's get the guy with Dijon in his name.
Yeah, it's perfect setup. Let's wrap up with another top prospect that's yet to come off the board heading into the season. That would be Reuben Bain out of the state of Florida, also from the city of Miami. And there's 6 crystal balls, if I'm reading this correct. So it looks like the Canes are sitting pretty right now with Reuben Bain.
Yeah, he's at Miami Central. And the big thing with Reuben Bain is, is he a defensive tackle? Is he an edge rusher? He thinks he's an edge rusher. I'm pretty sure he's going to rush from the interior long term, and that's fine because he's really, really good at it. He did it against IMG Academy when Miami Central upset them a few weeks ago, and probably one of the biggest upsets of the high school football season. He had 3 sacks that night, and everyone expects him to end up at Miami. I don't have a crystal ball pick in because I think there's still some red tape that needs to be addressed. His former high school head coach is now on staff at Miami in an administrative role. I'm not really sure about that. And then on top of that, his brother is a graduate assistant for Mario Cristobal. His brother played at Florida Atlantic, was at Illinois as a GA. Now he's on staff at Miami. So all signs are pointing to the Hurricanes. I think they're in the best shot out of anyone. I'll say this, though. If there's one school where Reuben Bain could leave the 305 and go somewhere else, and no one in his community, no one in his family would give him, much crap about, it's probably Alabama. And that's because of what Alabama's done under Nick Saban in terms of getting guys to the NFL, getting guys contracts in the NFL. So I think Alabama isn't getting talked about enough with Reuben Bain. And he was there in June for an official visit. There's a viral video of him driving Nick Saban around on not a golf cart. It's like a gator. Nick Saban's holding on for dear life. So I would keep an eye on Alabama, but yes, it seems like Miami is sitting in the front seat with Reuben Bain.
Yeah, he did take an official to Bama, Auburn, as well as Oklahoma. Do you anticipate him taking an official to Miami closer to the early signing period? And is there a possible time frame for this?
It sounds like that's the case. And Reuben's kind of a calculated kid. I wouldn't also be surprised if he's keeping maybe, Miami will get an official visit, and that last one he keeps in his back pocket to see what happens when we get into that silly season and coaches start bouncing around and going to different places. Maybe some guy that he really likes and really trusts ends up at a school he didn't know about in the first place. So I think that's something to keep an eye on with Reuben Bain in that 5th and final official visit.
Andrew Ivins, national recruiting analyst for 24/7 Sports, as well as the co-host of the Preps to Pro show. Always bring in the mustard. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
And speaking of mustard, it's Bijan Robinson. I said Dijon Johnson, Dijon Johnson. Mustard.
I messed you up. That's my bad because I called him Thompson earlier. So I'll take the hit on that one.
I don't need Texas fans in my inbox telling me I'm an idiot. I realized right away when I said it that it was a mistake.
Well, how about this? A tank on the field with a mustard logo on it. I think if we want to clump in all our ideas, I think that would be the one.
Love it.
All right, Andrew Ivins, national recruiting analyst for 24/7 Sports. And for our producer, Lance Glenn, I am Blair Angulo. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast.